Hey everybody, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Ty. I wanted to make a quick video of my thoughts and review over the JP Morgan Bitcoin Bible. This just came out today on Zero Hedge that JP Morgan is coming out with a Bitcoin Bible. This is a 71-page research on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin. A lot of people are saying this could be false and fake news, but after doing some research, I do believe this is true and that they are going to come out with this. I don't know how they're going to distribute it. Usually, with those of you that don't know, JP Morgan spends tens of millions of dollars a year on research. And so how they distribute that is usually just their clients or someone that's spending a lot of money to consume this research. I don't know if we'll ever get to see the full version or who is actually going to get to see it. The report that came out on Zero Hedge is a abridged version, so you can kind of look at this as a abridged version of a abridged version. I just pointed out and highlighted things that are interesting to me. Those of you that don't know, JP Morgan, the CEO, Jamie Dimon, also came out and said Bitcoin is a fraud. This was about 6 months ago. Said Bitcoin's a fraud. Any of his employees that invest in Bitcoin should be fired because they're stupid. And then on January 9th, he said he regretted saying that. And so it looks like JP Morgan could be kind of changing their tone on Bitcoin and cryptocurrency. Another interesting thing before we get into the research paper is apparently this is a leaked memo from JP Morgan, and it said crypto is unlikely to disappear. You know, take that as bullish or whatever you want to take it as. Now, in the paper, they do say CC a lot. The first time I read it, I thought they were referring to it as credit card, but it's referred to as cryptocurrency for short. Anytime you see CC, they're talking about cryptocurrency. The first paragraph is talking about how cryptocurrencies have grown a whole lot, and it is their best interest to monitor it to understand this new market, which is understandable because if you're a large financial institution, you want to be sure and monitor anything that poses a threat to your well-being. The next part, it says Bitcoin itself has split into two cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, to improve liquidity. That I think is completely false. That's not why it split. It's split into Bitcoin Cash because there's differences in the vision of the Bitcoin white paper. Plus, Bitcoin has forked many more times, and I don't know why. It's just referring to it as Bitcoin Cash, and they didn't fork to improve liquidity. The next part is cryptocurrencies are unlikely to disappear completely. It's saying it's going to survive because peer-to-peer and people that strive for greater decentralization. So that's good of them to recognize that this thing is not going to disappear. We also saw that with the leaked memo that's saying that cryptocurrencies are unlikely to go away. The next part is the top three largest cryptocurrencies, which they're referring to as Ethereum, Ripple, and Bitcoin, has a 550 billion a month transactions in volume. That's tiny, 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 because if you look at the overall Forex market, it's about $4 trillion a day. So $550 billion a month, and then just the Forex market is $4 trillion a day. This is a very, very small market in the whole grand scheme of things. They're also talking about the futures. Two Bitcoin futures recently launched are seeing only $140 million in daily trading. That is accurate. A lot of people thought the CBOE and the CME would bring a whole lot more volume in the futures, but it has been kind of disappointingly small on the daily volume with these two, but I do believe they are going to grow. And going to the next one, CC transactions happen in the underground economy. So it's saying in the early years that about half of the cryptocurrency transactions were in the underground economy. I guess they are referring to this as the dark web, which is probably accurate, like with the Silk Roads that gave Bitcoin kind of its value because you could trade it in the dark web for drugs or whatever on Silk Roads. That is very inaccurate now. There's a very, very small portion of Bitcoin that's actually traded on the dark web. It is mainly Monero because there is possibilities of tracking Bitcoin. Monero is very unlikely. I mean, you can't track it. So the Bitcoin isn't really used on the dark web anymore. I thought this was a little bit interesting. It'll be extremely hard for CCs to displace and compete with government-issued currencies as dollars to euros and yuan are virtual natural monopolies in the region and will not easily give up their profits. That's we all know that. If the dollar or euros they feel like they're going to be threatened by Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, they're going to fight back. JP Morgan stating that cryptocurrencies could potentially have a role in diversification one's global bond and equity portfolio. Pretty interesting. So they're actually talking about it could be a good thing to have as far as diversifying your portfolio. Part of it said blockchain cannot be ignored, so they do understand the importance of this. Next one is the excitement of innovation typically also leads to price booms and then crashes, which we've seen. We've seen a boom and we've seen a pretty large crash among the earlier movers before more realistic prices emerge among the eventual survivors. Much of this is what we see today with exponential price gains and losses. So they are seeing with this recent crash or drop is kind of like where we are, and then we will have a more realistic expectation of the price as we go further. Also, we said we could expect the marketplace and regulators to ultimately weed out what are less perceived the negative, less useful characteristics of cryptocurrencies, retain the positive elements that add economic value. I do believe that is true as well. There are a lot of people in the crypto community, they're like, oh, I don't want any regulation at all. But good regulations, we need to have good regulations. We need to have people enforce people not to do scams and BitConnect type stuff. And we want regulations as far as some of the exchanges. We don't, we don't want to get hacked if you have Bitcoin on the exchange, which I don't recommend having Bitcoin on the exchange, but some regulation is good. Next one, given the hurdle, CCs are more likely to be used as ancillary payment methods rather than gaining traction as primary sources of exchange. So basically they're saying ancillary payments, they're nothing substantial, very small payments and nothing, amounts to really much. We do not see cryptocurrency competing with central bank issued money for lawful transactions, which is kind of true as well. Several central banks are discussed in Faroli, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right, are investigating whether they should issue CCs in their own currency, but are very far from actually doing so. We have seen some kind of countries looking into issuing their own cryptocurrency, but actually, which is kind of interesting in this paper also, it says the issuance of crypto dollar, for example, would give non-banks access to the Fed balance sheet and thus could endanger the economically and socially important financial intermediation of function of commercial banks. Basically, they don't want people to have the entire balance sheet. With cryptocurrency, you can see the blockchain, you have the entire balance sheet. So issuing a government-backed cryptocurrency, unless they change some of the primary functions of cryptocurrency, possesses a threat because it is transparent and people could see the balance sheet, which they're arguing against that they're probably not going to do unless they probably change something very big on it. Next one, CCs could potentially have a role in diversifying one's global bond and equity portfolio. We talked about that. That is, to me, that's very bullish. I know a lot of people pick out parts and pieces of reports and only pick out bullish, especially crypto people. But to me, that's pretty bullish because they're admitting that it might be a good piece to diversify your portfolio. Interesting stuff. I really, like I said, I'd like to read the whole paper. Some of the charts, they explain how actually the blockchain and Bitcoin works when you pay someone. They go into this chart, which is the correlation of the last 5 years correlation to like gold if Bitcoin has, and then the past year. So you can take a look and see it like if things are correlated. We haven't seen much correlation of Bitcoin even with the stock market. Just here last week, the stock market went down quite a bit when cryptocurrencies went up. So we're not really understanding the complete correlation of cryptocurrencies of what it's correlated to very well. Over here, we can see what the total market cap is, UST, like the bond market. I mean, gold stocks 8.3 $1 trillion, and then here's cryptocurrencies, really tiny cryptocurrencies, $0.4 trillion, just very small compared to like the bond market or the gold market. Uh, the next table, it discusses what regulations has come out, talks about the SEC, talking about if you're going to do ICO, you have to prove it's not a security or else they're going to regulate it. We all kind of know about that. Indonesia, the most recent one, Indonesia kind of banning cryptocurrencies. We saw South Korea banning anonymous virtual accounts. So they want to be sure. They said, okay, it's fine to trade in cryptocurrency, but we want to know. We better have transparency of who has what, and like banks need to give all that information. That it could be bullish or it could be bearish. I think it's looked at both ways, but the South Korea, they are they are kind of for crypto, but they want to know what's going on with it. But anyways, you can take a look at kind of all the regulations around the world. Not a whole lot. In the past 5 years, there has not been a whole lot of regulations. Talks about China, Japan. Uh, the average bid-ask spread for 10 Bitcoin talks about kind of how it's different in the past month, 6 months, year, and 1 year ago with the USD, Euro, and Japan. Basically, what the average spread is for the buy and sell for 10 Bitcoin. This was a little bit interesting. So the proportional addresses and total Bitcoin held by Bitcoin balances, those holding 0.001 Bitcoin is 55.3% of the demographic. And that is actually like 0% of the coins. So 55.3% is like less than 1% of the total coins. But you got to think about, how many exchanges have wallets, and there's so many Bitcoin addresses that have really nothing in it, and that's counting all of those. 20.4% of the wallets have 0.001 to 0.01 Bitcoin, and this is only 1%. 1 to 10% is 1 to 10 Bitcoin, I'm sorry, is 2%, and that equals 8.6%. People that have 10 to 100,000 Bitcoin is less than 1%, and that's actually 16.7%. I don't know, take a look at the chart. It is pretty interesting. There is argues that Bitcoin is controlled by very few, and that kind of points it out as well, but it's really hard to tell because there's just so many wallets with, very little in it. And there's Satoshi's wallet, I guess. Or let's see here. Okay. I didn't really get this because it said monthly trading volume of the three largest cryptocurrencies. So they're talking about Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Ripple. I don't. They're just saying it's zero, and then after January 17th, it's going up. I didn't. If you understand that, I don't know why. I don't get that one because it was billions before January 14th. I don't know why they started on January 14th and then started going up on January 16th. Really, it should have been a lot more because, well, I guess they excluded January 13th and before is really where a lot of the volume is. So the volume could be like way up there. I don't really quite get that one. So if you do, please let me know. They do talk about some of the main cryptocurrencies, kind of how fast they are. Talking about Ripple, 4 seconds, Ethereum, 2 minutes, Bitcoin, an hour, and they actually do talk about traditional systems. So they do point out like how much better it is because traditional systems is 3 to 5 days. They do mention Bitcoin Cash again, and talking about average transaction cost. So we can, most people that are familiar, you know how much it costs right now. The mempool with Bitcoin right now is pretty empty, so if you need to move Bitcoin, now's a pretty good time. You can get it done pretty quick and at a reasonable price. This was pretty interesting. I know you probably can't see it, but I'll put a link to this so you can read everything. But this is the Bitcoin ETFs pending approval. We did have a Senate hearing just recently, and it is kind of bearish on are we going to allow ETFs or not? There's been a lot of ETFs apply for approval. And so this is all the ones that are waiting for approval. You can see awaiting approval. Some of them have withdrawn. One of them was denied and appealing that withdrawal. There's a lot of talk that we might have ETFs this year, like in Q3, Q4. If we do have ETFs, I think it'll be very, very bullish because it'll be just a way to really unload a lot of money into the cryptocurrency market. Over here, we can kind of see that talking about how, who's really mining all of this and at what cost they're mining it. But anyways, like I said, I'll leave you a link to this. Take everything with a grain of salt, and we don't know for sure. They have not verified this is actually from JP Morgan. I do believe it is after doing a lot of research. I don't know if we will get to see it, who gets to see it, and really, I don't really think this is like a awesome thing or a bad thing. I guess it's a little bit better than it is bad because their main points of talking about that cryptocurrency could be used as diversification. But this just gives more exposure to cryptocurrencies. And I just thought it was pretty interesting, and I wanted to kind of do an overview of some of the key things that I thought was interesting. Do me a favor, please subscribe to my channel, like it, comment, let me know if you have any questions. I really go back to comments and always reply. So please comment and subscribe. I make quite a bit of videos, and let me know if there's a video you'd like me to make one of. Thank you.